Roan, as you were talking, I've never actually asked anyone this, but I'm going to ask you because you've almost brought it up. I hear a lot of partners wanting to open a northern office, whether it could be Scotland, Sheffield, Manchester, Newcastle, whatever it is, and they say to me the exact thing you've said. Actually, we want to hire some northern candidates to speak to northern customers. Is it a real advantage being northern, speaking to northern customers? Is that a thing? Or because
my natural inclination is to, yes, I am a very valuable asset on that basis, Mark. But I think I don't think it's a northern trait to just be maybe, and but to be blunt and straight talking. You could sometimes argue that can also be a bit of a weakness as well. But I think it tends to just be a northern trait, where people just want to be told exactly how it is. And black is black and white is white, and there is very little room for grey. And I genuinely think that is probably more of a northern thing than it has been. And I think sometimes, unless your character is like that, it's not a geographical split, it's just about your character.
Yeah.
And it's how that comes across when you are selling or account managing or doing that. And there's value in, and and you've been through it, where people like to have people where they understand the scope of the land, and people like to know that somebody's only an hour away or 2 hours away, and if there's a problem, then they can do it. Probably less so now because of where we're at from a working from home, but psychologically, I think it's a factor.
Let's move your career on, because you then took, you were a successful individual contributor, and then you took potentially the natural progression, or not natural progression, shall I say, into leadership, because it's not for everyone, isn't it? So when you were an individual contributor, did you think you'd be a good manager or a good leader?
Oh, that's a good question. I'd done some mentoring, with a couple of junior guys, and I'd enjoyed it. And I think it's just sort of like, sometimes it's inbuilt in you in terms of like what you're bringing up. My mum just said, you're going to university. I didn't even know there was another option, because she'd said it's from when I was about 12. So you watch things or you see things and you just think, well, the next step is progress is that. You'd have to ask the people that I managed if I was a good leader. But I thought, again, real sort of simple Pratt logic, which is to sort of treat people how you want to be treated, and I'd been managed by some really good people up until that point, and took some of the good bits and the bad bits out of it and tried to implement it. No doubt I made some mistakes, probably still do, but overall, as long as you're conscious about it and learning from it, then you're having a good experience.
What have you learned about yourself since going into leadership roles? Is there things you thought you'd be better at or worse at, or you've had to adapt your style with?
I think one of the biggest thing is that I've sort of, when you do those psychological tests where they tell you what colour you are at home life and work life, I'm pretty much the same. People talk about your biggest weakness can be your biggest strength. And mine is high standards, and I think it was learning during that sort of leadership bit around, I can't expect that person or those people that I'm working for me, directly or indirectly, to be up to the standards. You have to build it like a football team, where you're not going to have your messes all of the time. You need your rock steady centre back, you need your solid midfielder, and it's just about adapting and knowing that you're not going to get everybody up to the standards that you want to, but then it's about cultivating a team that ultimately achieves those standards as a collective, but you've got different attributes from different people in that team. But it was about learning that not to have such high expectations, not to keep pushing those people around you too hard, and that actually where they were at was really good, because it was just a different factor or a different piece of the jigsaw that was contributing to the team that you've got. But I had to sort of, that was a massive learning curve for me, and probably there'll be people who in my past will have gone, probably pushed me a bit too far, and others that go, actually pushed me a bit as far as I could do, and I appreciate being pushed further because I needed it. So that was massive.
Once you've got your team and you've established your team, whether you've either inherited it or you've recruited and trained them yourself, what advice would you give to people or leaders out there about getting the team performing to the way you want them and always to their standards and their capabilities?
I think I've done a couple of different roles where sometimes I've gone in there and I've managed to do it. I've made mistakes probably because I probably tried to do too much too soon. And I think in my most recent role where I've read the book about highly effective habits, and it's about those 1% gains that you can make each day that actually transforms you or a team where you want to be, but it sort of happens by osmosis and really gradual rather than like shock and awe. And I think it's taking those small bits, but understanding where the vision is that you want to do, but making really small changes, but where and you've got the people in line where they can see the benefit of those changes. It's benefiting them personally, and you can see like a cultural change in things doing. And I think for me, it's about going in, observe. That would be my advice. Observe, understand the people, understand their requirements. And then the other bit is about making sure they know your expectations. And I think it took me, in the role I'm in now, where I probably put down my expectations in month 4 or 5, but I understood the team better. Whereas in my previous role, I went in and I did it in my first meeting, and I think that had a different effect. And overall, it ended up positive. I think it's definitely a better way, but we can all get frustrated with people in our team, but if we're not setting out really carefully what our expectations are of them in terms of how they want to behave, we expect them to behave both internally, externally, what does good look like from a performance, but you can't get frustrated because none of them are telepathic. You need to explain what it is that you're expecting to get to.
Do you ever get frustrated?
Oh God,
Rowan.
Yeah. You don't even need to finish asking that question. Yes.
Do you get frustrated? What frustrates you about the job or people you work with?
I can't name names.
No, you don't have to get anyone in trouble. What pushes your buttons? What do you think? It infuriates you?
So if I talk about sort of like my non-negotiables, right, of what I expect of those people that work with me or around me, is like I give everything, both in my work life and my personal life, everything, because then at the end of the day, at night, whatever doesn't work out, I can go to bed knowing that I gave it everything. So what frustrates me is when people aren't giving it everything, when I know they've got something spare left in the locker. And again, this is probably making me that just frustrates me, because people that come back and say, I could have done this, I missed it. Well, did you really give it everything? Do you give your partners everything? Do you give the customers everything? But then it's that whole sort of like ethos at the end of the night or the end of the day or the end of that role where you go, do you know what, I did as much as I could. And if you made a mistake, I'll always put my hands up to it, if I've read it wrong or whatever, but owning it and then learning from it. But frustration is just not giving it everything.
So if you were recruiting a new team member, what would you look for in them to sort of identify those traits to think, do you know what, if they joined my organisation or my team, they would give it everything? How do you get that out of them?
I think he's probably trying to understand more about both understand what they've actually achieved and how they've done it. But I try to understand sort of like what their motivation is. Do they have, what's the chip on the shoulder that they're trying to prove? What do they do outside of work that has those same characteristics? It might be they go to the gym 6 times a week, or that means for me then they're up and at it, they're hungry, they want to achieve something and they're pushing themselves to get somewhere. Where's their competitive nature? What is it that drives them? But understanding sort of both their work drivers but their personal drivers, and what is it they're trying to actually achieve. That is sort of, I think I look at both, CVs are brilliant, LinkedIn profiles are excellent, but what makes that person actually tick, and what is their deep motivation. That's quite hard to sort of uncover. Can be quite hard to uncover, but you can definitely get inklings.
Yeah, absolutely.